to took control here. Should we? Here. You can move over.
Is this yours or is this Jen's?
That's Jen. It's live right now.
It's live.
You're more than welcome. We have plenty of signs on the table. Get a sign. I saw gentle prodding of.
Try to go to the gym. Can. That's good there.
We're protected. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Jennifer Storm. I am the victim advocate for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I want to thank you for coming to the Survivor Stand Up rally. We're here today backed by these amazing, brave, wonderful Pennsylvanians, taxpayers, voters, and survivors and supporters of survivors to ask respectfully that the Senate come back and vote on Senate Bill 261. Many of you know that we've been here for a long time. Some of you know that many of us have been here for almost, well, over a decade, asking for these reforms. We've seen multiple grand juries come through, all with the same recommendations. Abolish the statute of limitation. Open a window of justice for previously time-barred victims. Most recently, we've also seen tightening up the mandatory reporting laws and increasing the penalties for people who fail to report child sexual abuse, and also clarifying non-disclosures for victims who enter into a non-disclosure so they know that they still are permitted to speak to law enforcement. We think these are reasonable measures. We know we have the support, overwhelmingly, of the House, who voted these measures forward and sent them to the Senate. A lot has happened since then, so I'm going to recap. We have a lot of amazing senators who have stood by us, stood with us, and are willing and ready to come back here and vote yes on the measures we're asking. As many of you know, we sat here nail-biting until midnight last week on what was to be the last Senate session. I say what was to be because I am hopeful that they will return. Senators put forth a proposal. Senator Joe Scarnati put forth a proposal that sounded reasonable until you look at the details of the proposal. And I'm going to go through why it is that we're standing here and we asked the Senate not to support those measures. What we are looking for is to protect the victims of the future, which would happen if we abolish the statute of limitations. We're also asking for the ability to respect and honor and validate the child victims of yesterday who were time barred and unable to access justice. Criminally, we cannot go back and allow these survivors to press charges against their offenders because it's unconstitutional. What is not unconstitutional is giving them a civil window to go back, go through a civil court procedure, name their perpetrator, get evidence, depose those accused, and have a jury of their peers decide the facts of the case. It is not unreasonable. For months, in fact years, many senators have thought it was unconstitutional. We've been able to eliminate that argument, and even the prime arguer of that debate, Joe Scarnati, obviously realized that it was constitutional because in the proposal he put forth, there was a window. Here was the challenge with the window. It was a window with Catholic curtains. It was a window that sought only to protect the institutions that covered up, that knowingly and willingly allowed rapists, predators, abusers to move within parish to parish, school to school, football field to football field, and they did, not only did they do nothing, they knowingly covered it up and allowed other children to be raped and abused. I find that deplorable, and you should too. What the proposal was a window for victims to sue their perpetrator, and then for those that wanted to hold the institutions accountable, there was access to a fund. Now I want to be very clear, the fund was voluntary on behalf of the institutions. There was no real recourse through that process. There was no certainty. So these victims were going to come forth and have to go through a process that still empowered the institutions to make the ultimate decision whether or not they were going to even entertain their claims. It's unjust, it's inappropriate, it's harmful. We want a true window for victims to be able to not only name their perpetrators, but to name the institutions who covered it up, period. They want their day in court. We're here today not flanked by senators and House reps and the AG and the governor, even though so many of those amazing individuals are incredibly supportive of what we're doing here. We're here because on Friday, Senator Joe Scarnati spoke to the Philadelphia Inquirer, and he said that those of us that had been here for hours, survivors who took off work, who made financial sacrifices to be here, who did not get reimbursed for mileage, who stood on these floors for 12, 18 hours per day, were politically motivated. I took personal offense to that. I'm not an elected official. I serve the citizenry. Most importantly, I serve these amazing people behind me. I don't care if you're Green Party, Tea Party, Republican, Democrat, Liberal. I don't care who you are. If you're going to do the right thing to protect children in this Commonwealth, I'm going to stand with you. And I'm pretty sure that that's the belief and the feeling of those behind me. I want to ask you guys real quick, how many of you are here because you're politically motivated? How many of you are here because you're motivated by justice? Make some noise. I think that answers your question, Senator Scarnati. I know so many senators want to vote on this bill. I'm not here today to be negative. I'm begging the Senate to come back. One of the challenges is that one senator holds the power. This session's not over. The Senate is on a 6-hour callback. What that means is at any moment, a phone can be picked up, and those senators will come back and occupy their halls, and they can vote on this bill.
Let's do it.
Right? Let's do it. The problem is that only one person has the power to pick up that phone and call them back, and that's Senator Scarnati. I want to make it very clear. We support options for all victims. We're not here saying that a fund is not something we're agreeable to. We realize that there are survivors who want and need to access a fund quickly, quietly, and they don't want to go through a court process. We want them to have that ability. We also want the survivors who want their day in court to have that ability too. So we're open to the compromise. Come back and make it happen. There has been some horrifically negative attacks, and this has been made to be such a political issue. This is not political. This is personal at the corest of levels. We are not here because we're politically supporting one candidate over another. We've had brave senators on both the Democratic and the Republican side stand up and support us. Senator John Rafferty in Montgomery County has pushed forth a bill to abolish the statute of limitations time and time again. He was one of the first senators in the Republican caucus to stand up and say, this is constitutional and I want it done. Senator Vincent Hughes sat here, stood with us at every rally, and has advocated boldly for the passage of this legislation. We have people on both sides of the aisle. We have the votes. We have one person standing between justice and another year of waiting and coming back. Now make no mistake, we're coming back if we have to, right? We're not going anywhere, and we're growing in numbers. But what's also growing are the victims who are being sexually abused every minute, every day. We need to protect all victims of sexual abuse in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and we are asking the Senate to come back and help us to do that. It's one vote, it's one day. We have some amazing survivors here to speak with you today, and I'm incredibly humbled to be among them. First of which is a face that is very familiar to this cause. He has been relentlessly coming to this Capitol. He has been working in his district, trying to raise awareness of the atrocities of childhood sexual abuse. Sean Doherty.
Hello, thank you all for coming. I appreciate this opportunity to speak today. I am one of those victims that is so-called politically motivated to be here today. I, along with the victims behind me, were here from 8:30 in the morning to 12:30 in the morning last week. I believe politics did play a role, however not by us. We're fighting for our lives here. We are literally fighting for our lives, not for politics. The politics was played on the opposite side of the caucus doors. That's where the politics has always been. Senator Scarnati said they waited 20 months for this legislation to come back from the House. That's because they didn't do anything on 1947, HB 1947 in 2016, after the Altoona Johnstown report, a report which I am named in. We had to wait for this latest report. I don't know what gave us that idea that we'd have to wait for a report to come out, but something gave us the idea that Senator Scarnati was going to make us wait, and wait we did. We got wind of Senator Scarnati's proposal, and as a true leader, Dave Reed stood up in one final act to stand with the victims and say, Senator Scarnati, this isn't leadership, and my House will not accept this legislation. That's what leadership does. They do not pick up their Senate and go home when they don't get their way. The Senate leadership shouldn't hold the doors open on their way out for their Senate to run away. If you'll see the people behind me, we will never adjourn again. We will come back in January. We will come back in February, March, April, May. 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 24, 28, 80. We're getting our law. We're protecting Pennsylvania children. I don't know who you're protecting, Senator, but it is not us, and it is not future generations of children. We also stood here in those halls that night and we watched lobbyists walk in and out of all of these Senate doors. I saw it with my eyes. They walked in and out of these halls. Maybe that's who you were negotiating with. You said there was nobody negotiating. That's not true. I know for a fact Representative Mark Rozzi is willing to negotiate. I know for a fact the governor is willing. I know for a fact the victims are willing. I know for a fact that everybody is willing to negotiate except for Senator Scarnati. We have the votes. I'm going to say that right here. I'm predicting that we have the votes in the Senate. All you have to do, Senator, is bring them back before Thanksgiving, before anybody bellies up to that Thanksgiving table. Bring them back. It'll be a very quick vote. We need 26 votes, 26 yeas. We have more editorials from papers across the entire state than 26 in support. We have editorials from conservative-leaning papers. We have editorials from liberal-leaning papers. They're all calling for you to come back and run this bill and get the governor to sign it. Believe me, we'll be here when you come back. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Thank you for covering this issue. I greatly appreciate it. Please call your senators, implore them to come back and get this legislation passed. Thank you.
So much of this discussion has been about clergy abuse victims, and rightfully so. The 40th Grand Jury Report is offensive, it's appalling, it's gut-wrenching, it's heartbreaking. Only 6% of all child sex abuse survivors are from the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church has made this a Catholic Church issue. We want a bill that protects not just 6%, but 100% of all survivors. I'm very honored to have a survivor who is speaking for the first time ever. She is a time-barred survivor of childhood sexual assault. Chrissy.
Good afternoon. It was a little hard to come here my very first time to finally be out in the open. I've talked with several people, but not in a broad spectrum like this. But a lot of us who, when abuse happens to you as a teenager, you don't have a chance. You want to hide everything. You just want it to be over and block it to the back of your head. So once you grow up a little or start understanding what truly happened to you, it's too late for me to to name my accuser, to just be justified. What I want, my biggest thing is, for the senator, I want you to think about your children, your grandchildren. Think of them at age 12. Okay, we're tomboys who, having a good time with your friends, and someone that you trust more than anything in the world betrays that trust so unbelievably that you are even dumbfounded to even know what to do about it. So you just sit there and you take it. And you take it and take it and take it for 5 years of my life until the age of 17 was finally when I broke free. I don't want a child to have to feel that they're barred. So once they have the realization of what has happened to them, to not be able to go to their accuser and name them and actually have a face look at you and show you that you're not wrong. You weren't the guilty person. It wasn't you that did this. You were a victim. Now, I choose not to be a victim. I'm a survivor. And all of these people here are survivors. I believe that the senators are hiding behind smoke and mirrors. Again, this is about the Catholic Church. This is about institutions and protecting them. You know what? Stop. What about us? What about us? What about me as a 12-year-old little girl? What about it? So all I can ask is that please stop, come back, do what's right. Fight for us. Fight for your grandchildren. Fight for your own children. Because I'll be darn straight, I'm fighting for my babies for the rest of my life and every other child I can. And thank you for your time.
We know that with sexual violence, childhood sexual violence, the average age of disclosure is 52 years old. This is why we are standing here fighting so hard for these reforms. I'm often asked the question, well, Jen, but everyone's willing to negotiate the SOL. Let's extend it. Why not protect the victims of the future? We want to protect the victims of the future, but we also appreciate that if we don't protect them all, then we're dismissing a large portion of the crime victims. Not all children can come forward and disclose. We want that time and space that we know scientifically children often need, but not always. The next individual that's going to speak, his name is Tommy Williams. He disclosed before his 10th birthday. He's 15 years old, and he has been spending his last couple years standing at every podium he can to talk about his story and raise important awareness so that other children can feel empowered like he did and come forward and break their silence. I'm so honored to have Tommy speak today.
Hello, my name is Thomas Williams. I am 15 years old. I am here today to ask for the Senate to come back and vote on Senate Bill 261. As a survivor of childhood sexual assault and abuse and rape, I personally know how important it is to be believed. It took me 2 years of repeated sexual abuse and rape to finally disclose. So I can see how someone can wait for years to disclose. Just because I disclosed before the statute of limitations ran out, does that make my trauma more meaningful? No, it does not. As children, we are helpless and vulnerable to everyone around us. We trust adults to protect us. We expect adults to support us. We expect adults to listen to us, and most of all, we expect adults to believe us. Are we like any senator that is refusing these brave survivors the right to closure to look at me and think about these adults around us? Think of them as children that just want closure and tell me they do not deserve to have their abuser's name and finally get the closure they deserve. We all see them as adults, but they were children when this happened. Senators, I ask, will you stand up for these children? This is your chance to show them that they are believed. You have the power just by giving them the chance to know their pain and suffering for so long matters. Think about all the lives lost because those who should have protected them hurt them. Please show them that all victims matter. It's our story. We should get to decide when we tell it. Thank you.
If a 15-year-old can come up here and articulate this and gets it, the Senate should be able to do the same. We know that sexual abuse that happens in childhood doesn't just impact the child. It impacts the entire family. I would be pretty shocked if there was a person in this building, both behind me and in front of me, that didn't know someone who was impacted by childhood sexual abuse. Some victims can come forward and stand for themselves, some can't. We rely on our allies, our family, our support, those adults that Tommy referenced. My mom's here holding my sign. My Director of Communications, Ashley Walkowiak's mother's holding her sign. We need adults to stand up and represent us. This impacts the family. The Fortney family has illustrated so beautifully over the last couple months that they have finally been free to share their story that childhood sexual abuse destroys a family. But more importantly, what they've shown is that by standing up and advocating, it can rebuild a family. And I'm so honored to have them here with us today to share their individual stories, the Fortney family.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I see a lot of familiar faces, and our family is very appreciative. My name is Teresa Fortney Miller, and I am one of a family of 11, consisting of 8 girls, some of which you see back here behind me, and 1 boy and our mom and dad. And many of our family are in the crowds here. We were raised in a devout Catholic home in a small town, close to here actually, called Enhant, and it's very close to Bethlehem, Steelton. It was there where we attended St. John's Catholic School and also St. John Evangelist Catholic Church. We were all very involved in all of the sports and activities that the school provided for us, and we actually loved being in a Catholic family. It was all that we knew. We loved being Catholic. Our family was Catholic, our friends were Catholic. Who wrote this? No, our dog was Catholic. In 1982 is when our family was forever changed. We were introduced to a pedophile priest named Augustine M. Jella. He was moved from New Jersey and accepted into the Harrisburg Diocese by Bishop Keeler. Father Jella was then positioned as the main priest of our church in the diocese. We were very excited because we were the chosen church to get a new priest. And like everyone in our parish, we could not wait to meet him. But over the decade, Father Jella magically used his manipulation and grooming techniques to win over our entire family, where he molested at least 5 of us, but affected all of us. Since the abuse was revealed in 1992, our family has been left to pick up the pieces from the devastation that not only his direct abuse caused us, but also how we were treated by the Harrisburg Diocese and the hierarchy. Our family was literally discarded when our abuse was disclosed to them. My parents were in shock and needed help for their children, but instead they were ignored. Therefore, we called Children and Youth Services, which then led to an arrest. Our pedophile priest died awaiting trial. Because there was an arrest and police were involved, his home was raided, and our family was actually able to have some questions answered, but not all of them. For the past 26 years, while being held to a gag order, our family has known that they, the Catholic Church, and the hierarchy knew all along. And documents reported in the grand jury report proved it. The hierarchy knew, Monsignor Hugh Overball knew, Bishop Keeler knew, and they covered it up. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Fortney. I'm the youngest of 9 children in our family. And on September 24th, 2018, I stood on these steps with my sisters, my son, and fellow survivors who we now call family. After just witnessing because this is our house, our Pennsylvania House Representatives passed Senate Bill 261, 173 to 21, and I know all of my fellow family members behind me were filled with hope. At the candlelight vigil that evening, Jennifer Storm, our Pennsylvania Victims Advocate, and I'm going to see if I can get through this, stated in her speech, sexual assault literally changes your DNA. She explained the impact that sexual assault has on a person. She continued, when I walked in, I saw my beautiful son, he's 3, who is the picture of innocence and joy and beauty. Just then, as I am now, my chest got heavy, my body temperature rose, and I could feel my body start to tremble as she continued. And I look at him every day and I think, please God, don't let anything ever happen to him. Because I know all too well, as do the amazing people behind me, I know that then, when I look at him again, the sparkle in his eye will be gone. It will darken, and the shimmer that comes out of his soul when he smiles and laughs will crumble. Just like I am now, my eyes swelled with tears as my face fell into my hands while my mind raced with so many thoughts and emotions, most of which all conflicted with one another. I felt hopeless and hopeful all at the same time. They say child sexual abuse is soul murder. This term was coined by playwright Henrik Ibsen, described as the destruction of the love of life in another human being. Living becomes painful, literally. In an article written by Carrie Barron, MD, she stated, survivors can be saved. For my fellow survivors, my family, this means that loving life again is possible. I challenge you to love life. I challenge you to reclaim your soul so that each and every child has the opportunity to keep that sparkle in their eye and that shimmer in their soul as we continue our fight to end child sexual abuse. Carrie Barron, MD, also said, one loving person can make all the difference. Harvard Graduate School of Education states that a single relationship with a caring, supportive, and stable person is a source of resilience. Let me say that again. A single relationship with a caring, supportive, and stable person is a source of resilience for survivors. And so with that said, I want to thank all who have supported us, our friends and family, our fellow survivors. I want to thank Mark Rossi for his resilience and unwavering fight to give victims justice. The Attorney General, Josh Shapiro, and his team, and I capitalize team, because he has countlessly, time and time again, from the person who spent time, overtime, coming in, not even getting paid, to scan all these documents in for the grand jury report. That's why I highlighted team. So, for believing in us, and for believing in us, for not giving up, and for your constant reminders to all survivors that you are not giving up on us. When I hear that he is coming to the Capitol, and or I see him here, I gain a little more strength. To our House of Representatives, who chose to be a hero by voting yes on September 24th. To Governor Wolf for believing in us and supporting us and being behind us all the way. And to all the senators, if and when given the opportunity, I thank you for choosing to be a hero for the survivors as well. Last but certainly not least, Jennifer Storm, for your tireless efforts and unconditional love, for the sparkle that has found its way back into your eye, and for the shimmer that once again comes out of your soul when you smile. You give me hope that I too can one day change my DNA, love life, and reclaim my soul. Thank you.
Sorry about that. When she was speaking, I remembered that sparkle in her eye, and I longed for the day to see that again. And her here, I love you so much. I'm so proud to stand here with my sisters and fight this fight, because I know what has happened to us cannot be changed, but we can change the future, and that's what we're fighting for. So, I do have a prepared speech, and I have to get that out. My name's Jeannie Fortney Webster. I am a survivor of the survivors, and I fight and work every day with anyone that will listen to help us protect these children. The greatest moral crisis facing our state, the country, and the world is presently upon us. Senate Bill 261 has the opportunity to correct the wrongs and protect our most precious resource. As Senator Scarnelli's statements were made, that the survivors have made this fight political, let me tell you, this statement and anything remotely suggesting it couldn't be further from the truth. Just because somebody says something does not make it true. Over the course of months and years, the survivors have placed their lives on hold, some traveling great distances, using sick and vacation time, paying hotel and parking expenses, and also sacrificing the needs of their own families to advocate in a bipartisan way with the purest intentions to ensure no other child in Pennsylvania will have their souls destroyed by these evil, lurking monsters. The survivors have worked diligently and relentlessly in meeting with senators to share the horrific stories, told them what outcomes they'd like to see, and shared our opinions on the constitutionality and two-year window. Not once have we ever questioned or disparaged a political party. In fact, when we were here deciding to meet with senators, We met with those senators who were considered undecided or a no vote. We didn't care what party they belonged to. None of us asked. The only thing we cared about was being able to meet with them and answer any question they had. So you see, it didn't matter if the senators were Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Because the Republican, Democrat, and Independent survivors only cared about which way they were voting. The only political party we care about is the Yes Party. So senators, if you belong to the Yes Party, we thank you, and we will fully support you from this day forward. If you are the undecided or the No Party, we will do everything, and I mean everything, in our control to upseat you. If you will not protect the children of Pennsylvania, then you have left us no choice. We have made it our mission to continue this course. There is a story behind this book, and I can't go into it because it would take too much time. But I'd like to read you an excerpt from this book, Inferno, by Dan Brown, on page 163. And this book was shared to me with my father, who, if he had it in him, he would have liked the senators to know what he saw in this book. The darkest places in hell are reserved for those who maintain their neutrality in times of moral crisis. And that, my friends, fellow survivors, leaders, is exactly what we are faced with right now. The greatest moral crisis of our lifetime. And it will be up to you to come back and resolve that. Thank you.
Mine's actually really quick. My name's Patty. I'm one of the 40 sisters, and I just wanted to address something that was said to us in a meeting with Senator Scarnati, and it was also re-quoted by him in the press conference that he did with Senator Brown on Wednesday after the no vote in the Senate. When he was talking with us in his office, my family was able to meet with him, he shared that in his district that he had spoken to victims, and those victims all said that they do not want to go to court and that they want to just access the fund. They believed that that was the true path to healing. I looked at Senator Scarnati and I said, Senator Scarnati, I need you to look at me. Look at me. I'm a victim. And I am telling you that the people that I have talked to want their day in court. We need discovery. We need to know what happened to us. Why did this happen? Who was involved? That, for our family, has been an incredible source of healing. We had the gift of the grand jury. We found out through the grand jury that in 1987, that a teacher went to the principal of the school and reported that a student had said that someone in our family was being abused by Augustine Jella. The church did nothing. They covered it up. That discovery meant a lot to us. When you're a victim and your family has been ravaged like ours has, you need to put the pieces back together. Now, with that being said, there are some victims out there that can't do court. They just don't have it. And he's right when it comes to those victims that choose that. And that's why, like other people have said, I don't know where he got that we are not willing to compromise. We've all said that as long as that's a choice, we're for it. We're for a fund if it's a choice. But it can't be the only avenue in order to protect institutions. And the last thing that I want to just real quick touch on is something that Senator Brown said in the press conference. I was actually floored by this, and you'll see why. Senator Brown talked about victims being compensated for damages that they, being compensated by institutions, and that if we were allowed to take it to court, that those damages could hurt that institution so much that it would not be able to still be able to take care of people, like through its social services, okay? And he said that was one of our major concerns about the window. It doesn't accommodate the collateral damage that could be potentially caused to others who are trying to seek services from organizations that are part of this. And you know, the first thing I thought of was a letter that my parents received when my sister Sandra, who was a paralegal at the time, convinced my parents to seek an attorney for help, because at the time, only Carolyn had come forward. And the Harrisburg Diocese, by the way of their attorney, Philip Murin, sent a letter, and I'm going to just put one quote in this. It will be difficult for the diocese to absorb the financial impact of the settlement, but it is willing to do so for Carolyn's benefit, even though it will mean that fewer funds will be available for the spiritual and charitable missions of the diocese to its people. My mom then wrote back, and I'm going to read a quote from my mom's letter. She said, if they are taking from programs for the poor to try to cover the settlement, it is their choice because of their desire to keep it private. Maybe that is why they can't get it from insurance sources or other means. We should not be made to feel guilty about their choice. So when this is all over, they can all be a little appreciative of us for only wanting what we need to help heal the large window that we will always have to deal with. If they are suffering financial difficulties for whatever reason, I find it impossible to sympathize. Their lifestyles and priorities have caught up with them, and now they need to suffer in order to change.
Hi, my name is Laura from Dean McKeever. And before the vote, so many of you, our Facebook family, our Survivor family, my friends, many that are here today, said, it's going to happen. Don't worry, it's going to happen. And you know why they said that? Because they knew, how could it not? So then, after the vote, or no vote, their minds went to, they reached out to us, and they're like, that's it. It's all about power and money, is what I heard. And that's a shame. You almost want to believe what they're saying. But I know that there are a few good men and women in the Senate and in the House. Quite a lot of them. I know some of them personally. I know their moral compass. I know that they had mothers and fathers and grandfathers and grandmothers that instilled values in them to do the right thing at any cost. Christian values. But that day last week, I watched those people trade the values that their grandmothers and grandfathers instilled in them for power. Because they didn't vote and do the right thing for an institution. When we were in offices, one of the things I kept hearing them say is that the parishioners they're worried about the church going bankrupt. If the church is going bankrupt, it's because the church decided to go bankrupt. Let me tell you, I've been around the world. I've watched 25,000 people lining up around the block at the Vatican, paying $35 per day to get in to tour a building. When you equate that, that's $300 million per year. If they're losing parishioners, it's not because of money and they're not putting their money into the plate. Because it's not even that money that they're concerned about. I watched our pedophile priest take that money out of the plate and put it into his pocket and take us out for ice cream with it. Dirty money, your money. They have the money. If people are leaving the church, it's because they're wising up. In our small town, there were 4 churches that closed down, not because of bankruptcy, because people are sick and tired. And they're smarter than these senators, these Republicans, and the hierarchy of these institutions think. I truly thought that they thought that we were not as intellectual as we are. That's why they thought we were being political and politicians. Well, I'm here to tell you, we're a bunch of smart cookies, aren't we? And more than anything, we have passion, and passion is what fuels change. And I want to ask all of you, those of you that said you couldn't be here, I know a lot of people couldn't be that wanted to, truly wanted to be. I'm asking you to stand on the Christian morals, values of your grandfathers and your grandmothers, of what they would want you to do, which is to do the right thing and to fight for your family's DNA. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Whew. Okay, we have a couple more amazing survivors that are going to tell their story. I thank you for staying here and standing with us. We've been doing this for a really long time, and most events that we've come to, only a couple survivors have been able to share their story. So today was about the survivors, so I thank you for allowing them to share their truth. Michael Broussard reached out to us kind of at the last minute, and I was not aware of his story, and I'm so grateful to have become aware of him and his story, and he is here to share that with you today.
Thank you. My name is Michael Broussard, and I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. My stepfather started raping me when I was 7 years old. I'm told reliably by members of my family that at 6 years old, a year earlier, I was a very happy, outgoing child. I loved everything and I loved everybody. I loved to laugh and sing and play and dance. I had no fear. I don't remember that child. I have no connection to him. He's not me. I cannot remember ever feeling that free. My childhood memories began on the day my stepfather started abusing me. And he abused me over and over again for 4 more years. My childhood memories are of being sad, sullen, depressed, isolated, alone, vulnerable. Of trying so desperately to shrink in on myself and become as small as I possibly could, so maybe I could become invisible. And if I was invisible, he couldn't find me, and if he couldn't find me, he couldn't hurt me. That was my childhood. It's taken me most of my adult life, 40-some years, struggling to overcome that trauma. And finally, last year, thanks to a couple of amazing healing breakthroughs that I experienced, I felt strong enough to face down my abuser in court, to take back the power from my abuser. And I called up a lawyer and I said, I want to take my abuser to court. I want to face him down. I want to take back the power from my abuser. And the lawyer said, sorry, the statute of limitations has run out. No justice for you. And in that moment, I was hurled backward all the way to my childhood. Every feeling of triumph and power I had was gone. And all I could think of was being alone and terrified and trying to be invisible so I wouldn't be hurt anymore. But I didn't stay there because I'm a survivor. And as survivors, we rise. And this legislation, this 2-year window, is an opportunity for all of us to rise up, to take back the power from our abusers, to put these predators on notice that they will not be allowed to harm one more child, to find some healing, to find some justice. This 2-year window, that's a window to justice. That's a window to healing. Because really, in the end, all we're asking is please, please, please let us heal. Let us heal. Let us heal. Thank you.
Keep coming back. And every time we do, we get stronger and more voices join us. I'm so excited to hear the next survivor story because it's another story I've yet to hear. Jessica Mom is coming with her tiara, which is so beautiful. Miss Pennsylvania is here to share her experience in Shrek.
This is the first time I've ever been able to stand in front of more than just a few close individuals. I was sexually abused 8 years ago. And it's something that, as he had held you back so far that you don't want to tell anyone. For the people who have come forward and can tell someone right away or can tell someone within their statute of limitations, it's phenomenal. But when you don't want anyone to know what someone has done to you, when you believe that you may have caused this, I blame myself for at least 3 years. I thought I had to have done something wrong. This was something I did that caused him to hurt me. It wasn't until I met my husband 3 years later that I was even able to tell one person that I was ever hurt. And it was because of I'll call it a muscle memory. It was a way he grabbed my arm. And to him, we were playing around. He was joking. But the way I was touched brought me back to that moment. And it was the first time I was able to open up to someone. And the fact that that was past the statute of limitations already, before I could open up to one person, is why we need to stand up and change that. These people behind us, they're such incredible people with stories that they want to tell now. And now that we can stand together, that's what we need to do. We need these senators to come back and stand for us. Stand for the children that had no clue what was going on to them at such an early age. And stand for those who thought for a second that it might have been their fault. And it might have taken a few years to realize this is not my fault that someone is hurting me.
And you got the crown, so I'm just going to say yes, Queen, yes. Thank you. Our next speaker has a unique perspective on this issue that is profound. And I have been practicing the pronunciation of his last name all day long, and I'm hoping to say it properly now. I'd like to welcome James Faluzak to the stage.
I wouldn't be able to stand here today and deliver these remarks without the brave men and women standing behind me. They're my brothers and sisters. Yes, in addition to being a survivor, having been molested by my pastor when I was in high school in Erie, Pennsylvania, I regarded him as a bad apple, and I still felt God calling me to be a priest. And so I became a priest, and I served in the Diocese of Erie for 18 years. I know a thing or two about Catholic guilt because it was taught to me in the seminary. And I want to say to Senator Joe Scarnati, shame on you. Politics is a noble profession. We may not always believe that. We may look at many of our political figures and not feel that way. But when you're talking about upholding the common good of the citizens of Pennsylvania, can you think of anything more noble than that? But then for the president of our state senate to cast us as politicians as if it's a smear is shameful. I remind Senator Scarnati that I'm sure his intentions when he ran for office were noble. And I remind him that his profession and the people that he serves in this Commonwealth are noble. Make no mistake about it, this is a brand new moment for victims of clergy sex abuse. We've had 8 grand jury investigations in the United States before we had this most recent statewide investigation in the Commonwealth that ended this spring. Over 1,000 victims were noted by the recent PA 40th grand jury report. Since that report came out in August, over 1,300 calls have been made to the hotline that the Attorney General's office is running. And now, last week, we've had the announcement of potentially 4 federal probes of the Catholic Church in this part of the country. 4 U.S. Attorney General, or U.S. attorneys have said that they're investigating the Catholic Church. We have an ongoing investigation still by Attorney General Josh Shapiro, his prosecutors, and his agents. More and more victims are coming forward. They're contacting advocates, they're contacting fellow survivors, and we're here contacting elected officials. My message to every victim who might be listening today, who may be afraid to stand up or to speak up, you are not alone. Nothing will ever be the same again in the United States in terms of child protection. The floodgates have been opened, and the legislation that we seek is inevitable. This is the last place I thought I'd ever be standing when I was that 16-year-old boy in Monsignor Martin's bedroom. This is the last place I thought I'd be standing when I was ordained a priest in St. Peter's Cathedral in Erie. When I was teaching high school, when I was doing campus ministry, when I was doing prison work, this is the last place I ever thought I'd be standing. There's not a single person behind me that wants to be here. Senator Scarnati, quit forcing us into this public forum. We cannot get on with our healing without a 2-year retroactive window. The only one hurting us for political gain is you. Your leadership hinges hinges on insurance companies. Your leadership hinges on lobbyists. Your leadership hinges on 37 lawyers and law firms who tried to block the grand jury and donated to you last cycle. Let's face it, your leadership hinges on bishops. And then you have the gall to say that we are political? No, we're just the ones left crying at the end of the night, in case you didn't realize it. More than half of all the priest abusers, 19 of them, named in the Erie portion of the grand jury report, served in Senator Scarnati's district. That does not include Clinton and Tioga counties, which are in 2 separate dioceses. Among the notorious cases from his district is that of Father Bill Presley. I knew Bill Presley. I draw your attention to pages 87 and following of the grand jury report. This is in speaking of Elk County, Pennsylvania, St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, just over the hill from Brockway, where Senator Scarnati lives. Sitting Bishop of Altoona Johnstown, Mark Barczyk, sent a confidential memo to Bishop Troutman that detailed the results of his interviews to date. Bishop Barczyk, you could go visit him in Altoona today if you wanted to, stated the following: I was not surprised to learn from other witnesses from the Elk County area that there are likely to be other victims, and that several more witnesses who could attest to the brutality that they were subjected to by Father Presley. Barczyk went on to say, it is likely that there may be others who are also of the age for offenses. But to what end is it necessary to follow every lead? Bishop Troutman decided that in order, this is in response to Bishop Barczyk, decided that in order these additional witnesses should not be contacted, especially since any further victims would not have been under the age of 16. Senator Scarnati, this is your district I'm talking about. And last evening it came to my attention, while visiting Elk County, that Father Presley took 4 of his victims from Elk County to Disney World. While that type of information may be useful to this new federal investigation, I have to ask Mr. Scarnati, what do you think the body count is in Elk County? What do you think the body count is in Jefferson County, the site of Du Bois Central Catholic? In McKean County, the former site of Bradford Central Catholic? Senator Scarnati does not have to worry about having us confront him as much as who will confront him on the other side. He will one day have to explain the body count from his district. By failing to give victims their day in court, Senator Scarnati prolongs the murder of souls. This is my testimony before the 40th investigating grand jury. It is 30 pages, single-spaced. How much of this do you think made its way into this grand jury report? About 2 paragraphs. Was I disappointed? Not in the least. But why we need Senate Bill 261, why we need the retroactive window of justice, is so that this material can be added to this material. And we all deserve the same opportunity. Senator Scarnati's remarks last week acknowledged that he, as a parent, seeks to ensure that children are protected. I can't speak to being a parent, but I can speak to being a teacher of over 800 students in his district. When I was a priest in his district, I had the sad duty of burying 4 of my students, a task which changed my life forever. I can only imagine what parents who have lost a child to this horror must go through. And sadly, I've met many. As a priest, as a human, it was the honor of a lifetime to minister for 11 years within the 25th Senatorial District. And I can say, Mr. Scarnati, that I in fact do know your constituents, and I do know what they think of this. And I know the horror, the extent of the horror that went on in your senatorial district. And the only thing that I would say to you is this. Today, you have a tragedy that is avoidable. Of all the bad things that can happen in the world, or to a family, or to any one of us, senators, come back. Pass Senate Bill 261. Give us our window to justice. Help us avoid further tragedy.
As you've heard, we've got individuals who have been here for decades fighting for this. We've got people who have just joined us for the first time today. I want to make sure that every survivor out there knows you are not alone. There are free and confidential resources throughout this great state of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania Coalition Against Rape has 50 rape crisis centers across this great state, standing ready to help you. You do not have to go through your experience alone. I'd like to welcome Kristen Hauser to talk more about that.
Last and shortest in height. I actually had prepared comments today that were measured and kind of the regular talking points that we always bring up about why this bill is so important, but I've just spent an hour standing over here choking back tears. The rape crisis centers in Pennsylvania serve more than 33,000 victims a year. And most of those people that we serve aren't here on the stairs. And we know that there are tens of thousands of others who wait in silence because the people who work in those programs go through life having the experience that I have on a regular basis, that when I'm in a public space and somebody asks me what I do for a living and I tell them, people disclose to me, total strangers disclose to me all of the time. And they tell me, you are the only person I have ever told. There are people all over this Commonwealth waiting for somebody safe that they know understands and who will believe them. And it just takes one stranger saying, I work for a rape crisis center, to open that gate. People need help. They are carrying the burden of this around. All of the survivors who are here, who are active in their own communities, who are disclosing, who are looking for help, are more than enough reason to pass Senate Bill 261. But I'm going to shift our focus a little bit to institutional accountability and why it is so imperative that the window measure is passed, which includes the ability to hold institutions accountable for past bad acts. Institutions, whether they be religious, educational, military, civic, they set the tone for the individuals who are members. Institutions set expectations, they set norms, they condone or condemn behavior, they set the standards for what happens in our culture.
I don't think any of you need to get on Google to look at what has been the predominant headline in this country for the past 6 years. You don't need me to tell you that this country is finally talking about the widespread, damaging, community poisoning problem of sexual abuse. Whether it is the USA gymnasts, whether it is a university, name any of them, they've all been in the headlines. We don't have to pick on Penn State anymore, they've got plenty of good company. Whether it is elementary schools or high schools across this Commonwealth, our rape crisis centers are responding to desperate parents whose children have been harmed and who are getting no answers from the institutions in their community. Our Commonwealth and our nation is having an institutional leadership crisis. We would not be at this crossroads if that were not true. So institutions set the standards for our communities. They guide behavior, and they endorse or condemn the expectations of how we all behave. Being able to hold institutions accountable for their past negligence is important because it will inspire other ones who haven't yet paid their dues to change their policies and procedures. Do not fool yourself into thinking that the headlines over the past 5 years have woken up America, corporate America, educational America, medical America. There are still institutions that on a regular basis have leaders choosing to cover up and are putting reputational interests before individual safety. Let me tell you, every time a leader decides to protect an institution's reputation, they are actually endangering it. It is always the wrong choice. At the organization I work for, we are fortunate enough to work with a handful of companies who are prioritizing transparency, who are telling the truth about things that have happened under their watch, past and present, who are making meaningful changes to how they respond to sexual assault, and also are investing in prevention. We cannot prevent sexual violence without learning from past errors and without having companies really be on the hot seat that there will be a price to pay, a literal price to pay, in addition to loss of reputation, if they don't do the right thing. Financial hardship changes the priorities. We have stood up here and heard money and power are clearly important. So it's okay if we say money needs to be part of this equation because money has the power to make change. So, if you haven't done it yet, you should go home and pick up your phone and call your senator, your state senator. You should ask your friends and family to do the same. Tell them not only do you want them to come back, but you want them to tell Senate leadership that it is time. Let me tell you, I've been working at PCAR for 8 years. This has been an organizational priority now for more than a decade. There are a lot of things I could talk about, but this, I don't know, what is this, the 15th press conference maybe that I've spoken out on this issue? Guys, we've got a lot of other stuff to do. Tell the Senate. This is just one of many reforms we need in this Commonwealth. And this is a big one. It's an important one. It's been a priority for more than a decade. It is time to come back. It is time to do the right thing. It is time to take Pennsylvania out of the national spotlight again. We've been here for far too long, people. So let's get the Senate to come back and pass Senate Bill 261 and make sure that institutional accountability is part of our solution. Institutions need to be held accountable in order for victims to get justice and in order for the rest of us to effectively prevent sexual violence in the future. Thank you.
Who were able to be here today. We know that there are so many out there that weren't able to be here today that wanted to be here. We have family and friends here holding signs in support of their loved ones. But devastatingly and sadly, we have family members who have been here time and time again because their loved ones are no longer here because of the devastation and the impact of childhood sexual violence. And I would like to bring forward one of those fathers now. Lord.
I don't have anything prepared, but I just want to make a couple of comments. And the first thing I want to do is ask somebody out in the audience, does anybody out there believe that healing masses or prayers will solve this problem? So, my statement is this. Joe Scarnati and the rest of the senators who are undecided, you must protect the victims with more energy and stamina than the church does to protect its enablers and abusers. Pass 261.
We can stand here all day, right? Because we're not going anywhere. We're standing in our house, a house that is bought and paid for by the taxpayers. Where are they? Where's our Senate? Where's our House? They've gone home to campaign for your votes, but we're still standing here, and we welcome them back. I'm asking every single person watching this to pick up your phone right now, call Senator Scarnati personally, ask him to call back the Senate. They can't come back until he calls them. We know Republicans, Democrats want to come back and do the right thing. They want to stand up for us. So we're begging you, come back, come back.